sans dire à tout.
What's going on, jerk faces? It's your boy Andy, and you're watching Nocturnal Transmissions, brought to you by the Circle of Jerks podcast. It's a conversation you could be having during the day, but having at night. We are doing This is a pre-tape. I don't want to mislead anybody, but this is a pre-tape. But we are doing it at night. So unlike our other pre-tapes, this week the tagline is still accurate.
It's very, very accurate.
Very accurate. Yes. Yes.
We don't have to do a zoom in at your. We don't have to do the zoom in on your window, showing that it's not night.
Right. Exactly. I think some people can tell because there's like a usually if you do it during the day, there's like this white spot behind me on the wall, and so
right.
It seems a little bit brighter, but the look and everything looks right. On the screen that I have in front of me, so we're good. Yes, 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 I'm your boy Andy, and of course, co-piloting this thing with me, the Chewbacca to my Han Solo, homeboy Rob.
I'll take Chewbacca. That's a good sidekick to be.
Right, yeah, you get the cool bow blaster.
Exactly, and I can beat the shit out of everybody.
Yeah, and you rip the arms off of people.
Awesome.
Anyways, yeah. So Rob, what's going on with you? How have you been?
Well, let's see. Tomorrow, obviously, we're not doing the live stream, but I'm doing we're doing a church barbecue thing, so I'm gonna be going to that, which is why we're doing the pre-tape. Over the weekend, I went to a concert. It's the Happy Together tour. And I was easily the youngest person at this concert, but this is all music that I grew up with, that I love.
Right.
I'm
K-Earth 101?
Well, I guess to be honest, I have not listened to like FM radio in probably 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with like having like XM. But I grew up listening to 60s and 70s music most of my life, and so this had like some of my favorites. I had guys like the Turtles. The Turtles were there. Who else was there? They had Chuck Negron from Three Dog Night was there. They had the Cowskills, and a bunch of other guys. They had the lead singer from the Archies was there, and so yeah, just kind of all these different band members and bands from the 60s, and they were singing their hits. And I'll be honest, like a lot of them they still got it, man. Like they're still able to hit the notes, and they had a lot of great like funny stories and interaction with each other. It was kind of cool. You see, like they, on the background, they had like kind of playing some of them singing those old, their old hits, like back from like the 60s and 70s. So you got to see them.
So they had some archival footage rolling.
Yeah, so it was really cool. The the whole night was great. Obviously, like the last bit was, the Turtles came on last, and obviously you sang some of their great hits. One of my favorites was I think the song is called "My Girl," which is great. That's a great song from them.
Wait, is that different from the Temptation Motown?
Yes, yeah, it's very different from the. You can tell pretty much like the beat's completely different. It's a different song. It's titled the same, but a completely different song.
Right. Okay.
It's more of a rocky kind of like it has a lot of rock and oof to it. It's great. It's a great song. Cool. And everyone knows the song "Happy Together." That's one of their easily their most famous song.
Yeah.
And
I mean, like, I honestly couldn't tell you any other Turtle song besides "Happy Together."
Yeah, well, and that's most people. And actually, funny thing is that I grew up listening to pretty much all these guys. I know the songs, but it's like I kind of didn't know all the bands, and so
Mm-hmm.
now like, oh, I know this song, and it's like
Right,
I
right,
didn't
right,
know
right.
that it was the Buckinghams that sang the song, or it was the Classics Four. It's like, but I know the songs. It's like so it's kind of cool to put a face to the name, to the songs that I've been listening to for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and it was kind of great. Then everyone kind of came on at the end. The final number encores. Everyone kind of did a quick like 2 minute medley of like all like the songs that they did, and we all kind of everyone kind of sang happy together at the end. It audience and the band included, so it was a lot of fun. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I had a great time.
Cool.
And then I had to go to work the next day at 4:30 in the morning. So I pretty much got about like an hour of sleep, and then I was right. But it was worth it. Um,
Man, I don't know. I don't know how you're able to do that.
it,
If it was me,
I did not work it.
I'd probably just stay up, go to work, and then come back and knock out.
Well, that was the plan, and I kind of like I was sitting down, and I guess I kind of nodded off for a short time. So I kind of got about an hour of sleep, but it's all right.
I see. I see. Cool. Cool. Yeah, my weekend was pretty relaxed. Well, uh, let me start that over again. Well, I had to go to a funeral on Saturday. No one I knew, no one I knew directly, but because it's like it was kind of like a familial obligation. Um, because the person who passed away was the pastor who founded the church I went to growing up as a kid,
Right,
and uh, and the pastor's grandson married my cousin, and so
mm,
but I knew the grandson before that, and we were friends, so I was like, yeah, so I was friends first before he became like my cousin-in-law. Um, but it was good. I ran into some people I hadn't seen in a really long time, and did some catching up, and yeah, it was good. I mean, it was really nice to see kind of the fruits of the man's labor, because
right.
because like I met because there was people that from my childhood that I grew up with at the church, and I hadn't seen in a good long while, and it's like. And even like some of the speakers, they were saying like how because it was like a packed church, like there was standing room only, so which I think says a lot about you know the regard that people had for this man. And so yeah, and then one of the speakers was saying like how uh, we are all the fruits of his labor, because we're all believers, and we're all here because a lot of a lot of Christians, a lot of believers at the church were may not even have come to Christ without what this man had planted and begun.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and so so yeah, that made me feel a little bit more connected. Even though I had met him one time before prior, um, yeah, but just those words, hearing that word, and like realizing that like if it wasn't for this man, maybe I wouldn't have been a believer. Maybe I wouldn't have come to Christ. Uh, so to be like to be the the fruit of his labor is it's yeah, it really means something. Right? After that, me, James, Dancing Jason, and another friend, we went out to Hollywood for this meetup event. Where it was like a game night, but we kind of got there too late, and so like all the groups were formed, and so we kind of just had a beer, and then we just kind of hung out. And then we decided to go out, and then we ended up going out to this Korean nightclub, and we were kind of the youngest people in there, because it's one of those places that that's frequented by older Korean folk. Um, but we were definitely the life of the party. I sang a couple songs, and then once everyone knew that I was a good singer, I practically didn't come down from the stage. They just kept singing, like, oh, it's like, sing another one, sing another one, sing another one. I'm just like,
Oh, you went to one of those type of karaoke places.
Yeah.
That's kind of like that's like a white karaoke place where they have the stage.
Yeah. Cause usually, when you think of karaoke in like K-Town, you think of the little rooms.
Right. Yeah.
But there are a few spots where you can go up on stage and like sing. And so I did, and like the managers like she kept telling me, he's like, just keep singing, just keep singing, just keep singing.
Well, that's good. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a good time because like the one friend, other than James and Dancing Jason, we hadn't hung out in a long time, and so we just kind of lived it up, and we were kind of the life of the party.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it was a good time, and a pretty good distraction because I was like, not necessarily because of the funeral, but because like other little kind of like being pecked to death by ducks, as it were, that was going on, like on the periphery of the funeral. Started making me feel kind of like not wanting to go out because James and Dancing James there kept like telling me to come out, come out. And I was like saying like, oh, I don't really feel like going out anymore, and but they're like, yeah, stop being a punk bitch and just come out. And I'm glad I did because it got me out of the house, got me to stop thinking about my troubles for a few hours, and so.
Yeah, because funerals aren't. It's not like, man, I really I want to go out now and like have a great time, because that's the last thing when I think after a funeral.
Right, exactly. All right, so we have for you tonight a bit of a mixed bag of stories that we've come across in the news recently, and so so we're not going to dwell very long on any one topic. So let's get started. Rob, do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
Yeah, I'll start off. And well, speaking of church, for one, and something I've noticed recently, and through the news, and maybe even like a little bit from like my own church experience, is and with my own church, not quite so much. It's like little like teardrops of it every once in a while. But I've noticed how there's been a lot more churches that have become somewhat political, and especially with the whole the everything that's going on with our southern border, and for one thing, like I would have, if the church was just like, we hear the stories, and we want to send care packages like food or supplies just to kind of help out, and it's like, if that was something that like the churches were doing, not necessarily making a statement here or there, but just kind of trying to help out, and which I think would be a very Christian thing to do. I have no problem with that. That'd be one thing. But they are specifically taking not only a stance against the president, but more of like the whole situation, and how kind of taking a shit on the United States and all the kind of all the typical like lefty type of political like aspects. And now it doesn't matter if a church is either liberal or conservative. It doesn't matter. But church itself should not be to me should not be a place where politics plays a part. Mainly because when it comes to the unified Christian body is like that's what it's meant to be. We are meant to be unified. It doesn't matter if you're Jew or Greek, male, female, whatever. God has put us together as one unified body, and we are there to worship Jesus Christ, to become stronger day by day followers of Christ, kind of emulating him to the best of our abilities, and praying for one another, and helping out and sharing the gospel in whatever ways that we can. And I think by going political, to me, especially in today's day and age, how divisive that becomes, right? And as a Christian, going that route is you're doing something that is breaking up the body of Christ, because I guarantee that like I said, whether it's a kind of very conservative that would be more of a friend to us, or even on the lefty side, which there's definitely a lot of churches that are like that, but you're dividing at that point, because then it's like, well, if you don't, because they're trying to make it where the politics are like, oh, well, if you don't see it this way, then you're not a real Christian, and kind of they're not necessarily saying it in those words, but the attitude of it is kind of like that, right, in my eyes.
The spirit.
Exactly. And I don't know if you've noticed this, like from your observations of the news or even from your own church experience, but I've kind of been noticing that, and I am not happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, just the other day, I was watching the news, and a church here, in the valley, they kind of set themselves up as a sanctuary, because as you know, this past Sunday, Trump announced that he was going to begin his ICE raids.
Right.
And I think it was like, it was very laser focused. It wasn't just like, getting all, illegal immigrants. It was specifically going after the ones who have rap sheets, and who aren't just criminals because they transgressed our borders, illegally. These are drug dealers. These are gun runners, human traffickers. The MS-13 types.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And it's amazing that the media has gone to the lengths it has to skew, what they're actually intending to do, because put aside the desperate family that's trying to, that came over here just so they could achieve a better life for themselves. Just put them aside for a second, and are you saying that you're going to allow like hardened criminals, like people with records, people who have done monstrous things, I dare say, un-Christ-like things to their fellow man?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and that's saying, and that's putting a sugar coating around it. But it's like,
I mean, at the very least, like especially the human trafficking, which we know is a huge. That's not a phantom issue. That's a real issue that's happening, and it's definitely happening through the people are taking advantage of the situation at the border, and they are kidnapping children, like little boys and little girls, they're kidnapping women to create these faux families that don't exist, just for sure, maybe it is for the to solely for economic reasons, but it's still human trafficking either way.
Right, exactly.
Whether it's for sex slavery, just kind of chattel slavery, whatever it is.
Yeah, or like just being mules, being drug mules.
Yeah, right. But that's exactly what's going on, and that to me is one of obviously that that would be the Christian issue that that Christians should worry about even more so than this. And by actually having some backbone and guarding our border, this is to me this is the one thing that Trump gets almost zero credit for. That he, over all of his policies, this is the one thing where I feel like he's actually made a difference, is cutting down on the human trafficking stuff that's going on through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like these cries about like, oh, families are being separated. It's like, well, when people, when U.S. citizens, break laws and they're sent to prison, their families are broken up. You're not calling for those families to be reunited.
Would that be something if like one person from your family committed a crime and you all had to go to jail?
Yeah. Right, like whether it was the parent or whether it was the parent or the child, regardless, like if you mess up, then your entire immediate family has to go to jail with you. It's like that doesn't happen because obviously we have a system in place where we only prosecute the alleged or like the offending party and not like the totality of like their lineage.
Right. But
So like these cries about children being separated, it's like, well, what do you want us to do? We don't even know if these children are actually these people's children. And they're like, oh, there's like, well, these people, these kids are being separated from their parents, and sometimes they're being sent back with, and like they're being lost in the system. It's like, well, who told these parents to bring their kids? Like in the late 90s and like early 2000s, it was just single men, traversing the border to make money in the States and to send it back to Mexico. But then someone, it got out somehow. It's like, oh, if you come with a family, if you come with children, then you're more likely to get asylum or whatever kind of protected state. So like now there's like there's this influx of either families or quote unquote families, and so it's like we don't know the difference. How are we supposed to deal with the influx of something like that?
The well, what a lot of people forget is that I think it was back in like 2013, 2014, is that Obama was giving a speech about how it's like, do not come to the border. We will. It's kind of like he didn't do anything about it, but like his speech is exactly what Trump is saying and Trump is actually doing now.
Mm-hmm. Right, and that's another thing where they're getting mad. They're trying to shift the blame onto Trump, but the zero tolerance policy or or apprehension at the border or whatever. They're getting mad at him as though he made up these rules. It's like, but they're not. These are the rules that are on the books for quite a long time, at least for 20 years. But no one has bothered to change them or amend them or whatever. And so now
Right.
the entire load is being dropped onto Trump.
Well, this kind of part of this kind of feels like the whole thing with the thing dealing with slavery back in Lincoln's time, where it's like that can got kicked down the road so many times, and it really it came to a head at just before Lincoln became president, and I kind of feel like it's kind of the same thing going on with Donald Trump now. Is there's a lot of stuff that got kicked down the road, and no one really wanted to, like, because it's icky. Like, it's not a winning policy. Nobody really, like, wants to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But Donald Trump's like, no, we got to fix this. This is bullshit.
Right.
And it's unpopular with a certain element of people, but hey, it's something that, like, finally I think is getting at least addressed, where we
Mm-hmm.
can't ignore it anymore.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, even like when it was announced like the raids were going to happen, a few weeks ago, I remember people on my, people within my social media sphere, we're putting up those little flyers, telling you, like, oh, if ICE agents come, ask them if you can go, or kind of like basically how to, like, get away from them, or like know your rights and stuff. It's like, well, these are people who do not belong in our country on dint of them coming in here illegally. Because it's what taking it really to the micro level. It's like someone transgresses the borders of your home, and just sets up shop, eats, sleeps in your bed, eats your food, watches your cable TV. Are you just gonna abide that? What if they're an unsafe? What if they're as Trump put it, some bad hombres? And they start hurting your family members. It's like, do you still
Yeah,
then just like, do you still do nothing and just let it happen? I would hope not. So why would you allow it to happen to our country?
true.
Yeah, I mean, if
But
you like, okay, like, yes, if a liberal or leftist, whatever, can tell me that they would allow someone to just enter their home, set up shop, and have roughshod over how things are run in their house. Pedro says, like, hey, like, you only got the one ply toilet paper. Why don't you give me why don't you splurge a little bit and get the 2-ply?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
would you abide that? Would you abide that?
wasn't that I'm trying to think of who this was that did this, but was it Laura Loomer who went to Nancy Pelosi's, like, her house, and was like, "Oh, I thought fences were bad. Like, I thought we could just come in. Like, you said that, like, borders and doors and
Yeah,
fences
yeah,
were bad."
that was Zoomer.
It's like, but yeah, it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, well, yeah, oh, but you said that these things were bad. Like, so I should be able to, like, we should. She brought, like, people with her. It's like, oh, I thought we could go in. Like, I thought this was like my house too.
Right? Yeah, exactly. This is the Dark Knight Rises. This is the Bane. This is Bane's revolution.
Right. But back to my original point is, like, all these type of things, like, this shouldn't be something that is discussed within church, because all of this, like, sure, it doesn't matter, like, if you're a lefty or a conservative or a liberal, whatever, wherever you fall on the political spectrum, is like, this is stuff that to me is highly inappropriate to talk about at church. Obviously, like, things like, praying against, like, human trafficking or abortion or some of those things, like, yeah, we should definitely pray about those things. But as far as jumping into the political spectrum and all this stuff, yeah, I'm real uncomfortable with all that. Yeah, I don't think we should have, like, at least in a church setting, I don't really think that we should have a.
Right. I mean, well, okay. I'm gonna take a stance here a little bit, and it's like, and even if you are of the mindset is like, yeah, let them all in, you know, like, give them sanctuary and all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, if you are allowing for, these transgressions against, man's law, then why, then, would you have a similar attitude toward, God's law? Honor thy father and mother. Oh, whatever, it doesn't matter. Thou shalt not kill. Go ahead. Go crazy. What's the difference?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because if you really, if we are to believe, the word, that God, well, He allows for certain leaders and rulers to, good or bad, to run, these countries, because he could easily, like, change things, sure,
Mm-hmm.
but He has allowed these people, whether good or bad, to, for, you know whatever His plan or will is. We obviously don't know the whole picture, um, but if He has put these people in place, and you are, and obviously there's a certain time where if human laws are trying to circumvent God's laws, and we would, as Christians, we would believe that God's laws are higher than, the law of the land. And sure, if those two things do not mesh, yes, we are to follow God's law, but there is still consequence for that. There's a possibility, by that, through following God's law, we may be killed, um, or jailed, or whatever, by following God's law. That's a possibility, but we still, um, but like I said, there's consequences to that, like, either way. But
Mm-hmm.
the fact that, like, that people are so willing to just, oh, well, we're gonna break this law, and nothing should come of it. No one should get, there shouldn't be any repercussions. It's like, well, that's not how, that's not how the world works, and B, that's not how God works. And it's like, there's always consequences to that type of stuff. And I'm just like, I'm upset because I don't. To me, all this stuff feels very divisive within the church body.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's, well, hell, there was even, like, about a month ago or so, and it's probably still going on. But I heard a lot about this past, like, about a month ago, was how they're trying to, you know, change history, and to make Christ look like this, socialist, communist type of, leader, with how He did things. Like, that was never. That's completely false. I think this is,
Right. I mean, yeah, because they're like, oh, he fed the poor. Like, but he did, and he gave away. He didn't have any possessions, and da 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 da. It's like, yeah, but yeah, you know how the early church got started is people voluntarily, sold their possessions. They voluntarily gave a portion of what they made to the early church, so that they could then, like, support other people, because they knew that you know that their brother or sister would eventually then, kind of pay forward, kind of thing.
right, exactly, because one of the famous, there's two passages in Acts. It happened, well, it was talked about on two separate occasions, but I'm pretty sure it happened more than this.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, during the big, feast in Israel at the time, in Jerusalem, that was where, like, a lot of the Jews came to gather together, and this is right around the time that, everything that happened with Christ, and the Holy Spirit had come down, and God was speaking, through the apostles, and, to whoever, um, and to a lot of different people. And so, believers, they willingly, like, sold their home, some of their property. They sold whatever they could, so that they could donate, whether it be, like, giving up their house, giving up, like, some of their profit or proceeds, so that
Mm-hmm.
people could come and stay longer to hear the gospel, and to be changed forever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and that was the point, but it was voluntarily done. It was God was working within them, and to give them that spirit of charity,
Right. It wasn't.
not
Yeah. It
not
wasn't
having a
the.
gun held to the head, where, if, like, because you look at, not having it's like, well, if you don't do this, you're a bad Christian and you're gonna die.
Right. And it wasn't the apostles who were acting as like some governing body and demanding that people had to give up their possessions or give up their property or give up whatever they made like in the marketplace or whatever. It was all spirit led. You know.
Right, and well, and here's one to kind of also go to that point as well, and it's kind of it's a definitely a harsh example, but it kind of speaks to this point is the story of Ananias and Sapphira, and I believe it was I want to say it was like Acts 5, I believe. I could be
Right.
remembering that. I know it's in Acts, but the story of
Yeah.
Ananias and Sapphira, where they were in essence lying to the apostles and to God about how much, like, they said that they sold everything, yet they only gave a part of the proceeds and said that they gave everything, and so
Right.
they were technically lying, and
Mhm.
Peter talks to him. It's like, it didn't matter how much you gave us. But the fact that you could have
Right.
given
Yeah.
us
And
a
it was
small
like the
favor.
scene. The scene was like, yeah, was it Peter? You can correct me, but like he asked like, oh, this was really how much everything was that you sold off. He's like, yeah, this was everything. And then like in that like instant, like God came down and killed them, or caused
Right,
them to
and
die.
well, and it's like, well, it didn't matter how much you gave us. It was yours to begin with. It was
Right.
you were given the choice of, like, if you wanted to give a little or a lot. But the fact that and that's the thing, is it was never a forced thing. It was uh God gave the kind of that spirit of charity where people wanted to give, not because it was demanded of them, but because they cared,
Right.
and there was a common cause.
Right. Yeah. It was like when was it Matthew the tax collector, some tax collector that Jesus had dinner with, and he was known to be a cheat. It's kind of skimming off the top, and so he was so convicted. He said like, oh, not only will I give back the money, I'll give it with interest, like on top of what I took from them. And it wasn't like, cause, and it wasn't something that was compulsory. It was like it's not like, okay, it's like it's not like he said like, oh, I'll give him back all the money, and then Jesus said like, that's right, and you're gonna give him like 2% on like what you took from them. Also, it's like he came up, he was led by the Spirit, and he said like, not only will I give him back the money, I will also give them a portion more of
Right,
of
yeah,
what I
and
took from them.
he felt convicted through his own through the Spirit of God to do that, because he felt like it was, not only was it right, but he felt it was a way to, like, kind of recorrect
Right,
the injustice
make
that he had
amends,
put
make
upon
an
people.
atonement, you know. And last time I checked, that's not something that socialism or communism does.
Yeah,
That's
and
always like, give me your money or you're dead.
yeah, that's I feel like a lot of these stories and messages are from the Bible are, in one way, not necessarily, like, and I mean, in some churches they're being taught wrong, but like a lot of times they're just not being taught at all. And I think people are, um and it's like, you don't need to be a theologian and study Greek and Hebrew and Aramaic like a crazy person like me would do. But the fact that, like, these stories aren't being taught, and they're not being necessarily taught in their proper context, and things are, I'm very concerned with the direction that the church is going, in a lot of ways.
Mm,
I feel like sometimes there's a little bit of misdirection, and yeah, they are where things are, be like, oh, if you don't feel this certain way, or if you don't kind of think this way, especially when it comes to certain political things that are going on, or things that are going on in the world, if you don't feel a certain way, that you're made to kind of like, you're almost ostracized in a little bit of a way. Like I said, I feel I've been feeling that a lot more lately. It's, I don't know. I'm really torn. I've always had kind of a very prickly relationship with church in general, despite like obviously like I'm a Christian. I love God. I love the church body. Like I can't be separated from those things. Yet at the same time, it's been a very rough relationship when it comes to the church.
Yeah, it's like one time my pastor, he was sharing a sermon. I forget, this was a quote, but he's talking about how like Jesus is the groom and the church is the bride. And for a lot of people, it's like, hey Jesus, I love you, but I hate your wife.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Take my wife, please.
Yeah, please.
I was just, I bring that up only because I want it maybe to kind of make sure I'm not going crazy, like that maybe you're kind of seeing some of this too. I mean, maybe this will be something I'll ask of James and some of our other guests that come on that are churchy, like us.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the church has been made to bend even before this whole like migrant situation. And I'm thinking about this one specific church in West Hollywood, where if you're unaware of what the reputation of West Hollywood, it's Gay Town, USA.
Yeah,
it's Gay Town, USA, and it's kind of odd, but there's a church there.
Oh, be nice.
And and there's your Simpsons reference for the episode.
Oh, the day.
Yeah. The episode. If you,
anyways. we should have like a little like thing that goes like, "Woo, Simpsons reference." It's like.
Anyways, yes, there's a church in West Hollywood, and they fly the rainbow flag.
I have a huge problem with that.
What was that?
I have a huge problem with that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, especially when there's explicit passages within the Bible that says homosexuality is a sin.
And I'm not saying that doesn't mean that I don't want like people who are gay to come to church. Like that's not what I'm saying. It would be almost as ridiculous as celebrating like, woo, adultery, yeah, or
it's funny. I made this. I made this comparison a long time ago, but it was about like drugstores that sold cigarettes, and I said like it'd be like churches that had that gave out condoms in the bathroom.
Yeah, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's kind of a mixed messages. And like a lot of like, especially like churches, like specifically churches that also double as like event spaces. On their website, I forget. My cousin was getting married, and she said like, yeah, there's this church that we were looking at, but it said on their website that they do gay wedding ceremonies, and it's like a church, like they have Sunday like services and things like that. And it's like the church in a way has been kind of been made to bend, but now but because of that initial bend to like homosexuality, it's now allowing for like these like I guess maybe like false doctrines, or these kind of like these false doctrines to kind of seep in and kind of taint the church even further.
Right, and that's like like I said, the church is not a place for perfect people. I think any Christian that knows anything.
The church is a hospital, not a hotel.
Exactly, and like I said, I have no problem if like people who are gay that are coming to church, because that may not be a sin that I deal with, but and I'll be honest, that if you are gay and you're a Christian at the same time, that has to be one of the most difficult things to deal with.
I mean, yeah, because as straight people, or especially as men, one of the biggest things I think that we struggle with is the burning of lust.
Exactly. So I mean,
so it's not a direct apples to apples comparison, but even Jesus took it a step further and say, hey, if you even look at a woman with lustful intent, then it's the same as if you had sex with her.
Right, and so I'm not saying that I'm holier than someone who's gay. That's not
Right.
what.
Yeah. Neither am I.
That's not the
Neither am I.
point. But the fact that but we don't celebrate lust, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like,
yeah. I mean, like the whole pride thing.
Like I said, there doesn't need to be and maybe how we the church in general has kind of gone in the way of dealing with this situation has been wrong. I'll agree with that. There's definitely been, we haven't done it in a credible way. And I think the one thing I've always asked, like, why does it seem like there's so much, when it comes to church, so much animosity towards this one particular sin, yet it's not, some of the other stuff, it's kind of almost swept under the rug. And I think it's because something like homosexuality is very out in the open. There's not really a lot that you can do to hide it. And so because it's out in front of your face and we can see, it's like, ooh, ew, we don't want to, that's bad. And it is, but just think if there was things like pride or lust or envy or kind of all like the bad sins that are there. If we could see that out in the open and see kind of the monster that those sins create, I think we would do the same exact thing. And it's like, ew, gross, yuck. We don't want to deal with this. We don't want this. But a lot of those sins are kind of, in the dark, kind of hidden behind, kind of a curtain screen. That's like, so it's kind of almost like,
I mean, yeah, because there's in a way there's still shame associated with those things, as opposed to homosexuality, where they're trying to destigmatize it and not make it shameful.
Right, and so it's tough. I mean, obviously, yeah, I'm not like pro gay anything. I don't think, and I hate the fact, like I said, if that's like what they are, what they're dealing with, or they're like, yeah, I'm gay, but like, I'm a Christian. It's like, oh, awesome, like you're a Christian, great. But it's like, to me, it's like, okay, well, you're dealing with a sin just like I am. It's something different. But the fact that, like, we're almost being made to celebrate it bugs me. Or even the fact that, like, we're even like kind of,
or just not, or even not even so much of the celebration, but even like the choice of non-participation is not an option.
right. That's the other thing. Or like, or the fact that, like, making it, normalizing it, and it's like, you're asking me to lie. I'm not gonna lie about it.
Right.
And eventually there may end up being, this will be a situation, this will probably be the first of many situations that come later on, where the law of the land goes against the law of God, and there's going to be consequences for standing up for God's law. And where it's either gonna be jail time or I can't even say that word, ostracization. Yeah, or death.
Yeah. Well, we kind of got into it longer than I was expecting, but I think this is a really good talk. This is an important talk, regardless.
This is something that I've been as we started getting into it more, like, it's just a lot of the stuff that I've been really wrestling with and kind of been upset about and thinking about a lot. It kind of vomit it out. In
Right?
a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah,
ways.
yeah. Yeah, it's that thing. Like once you see one person vomit, it just comes out of you.
Exactly.
Yeah, but yeah, those are our thoughts. Actually, I do. I'll save it for the after the show. But there is something that I have been thinking about, particularly about homosexuality, and I do want to ask you. I do want to kind of like bounce an idea off of you, but but,
Okay.
but later, after the show. All right. Okay, let's get on to the. Oh no. Because like
Well,
we're
we'll do.
almost
We'll
like
do.
it's because like we're almost
Well, we
like
can
we're
do.
already in like an hour. So
Why don't we get to the topic that you kind of wanted to discuss? That I have. I've only kind of heard about it, but I don't really know what the hell it was all about. So
wait,
why don't you take it?
the bagel or the movie?
The bagel
Okay, yeah,
bagel story.
for sure,
So
for
I'll
sure.
let you talk about that. Give me 1 second. So
Okay,
I'm listening.
okay. All right then. Yeah. So for those of you who aren't on social media, you know, I don't know who's not these days, but there was a video that went viral, of this man who kind of raged out at this bagel shop in Long Island or Staten Island. I think it was Long Island, but it doesn't really matter. And he was having he was raging out over a comment that was said, or maybe a misunderstanding of one of the workers. A misunderstanding from one of the workers, and so he kind of goes in this rager about uh, about how people always make comments about him, and women uh, typically don't choose him on dating apps and things like that. And you think, well, that sounds really odd. And you'd be right, and because the reason why he went on a rager was because this man was very short. I mean, like very close to what is it? Being, I think, very close to almost being declared legally disabled, because this man was about like 5 foot, and I believe like to be legally considered a dwarf, you have to be 4'11". Yeah, exactly. He's literally an inch away from being like pretty much declared someone with a disability, and like that's actually a legal status. Like if you are under, like if you are 4'11" or under, then you are, I think, prescribed as having a disability.
Then my mom, my grandmother, and my ex would be considered disabled.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you haven't seen the man in question, he goes by the name of his name is Chris Morgan. And he does have a YouTube, or he did have a YouTube. I don't know if it's still up. I forgot to check. But he had a YouTube channel, and it was just I think kind of like vlog stuff, and but then also there are a lot of times where a lot of videos he uploaded where he was just like going off on people. So him like raging out is kind of par for the course. But for some reason, I think that because this bagel shop employee was a woman, and like she kind of snickered at him, he kind of flew off the handle, and like he was just starting to become very belligerent. He was like even getting in the face of someone, maybe average height, but then for him very like a giant. And he was like getting in his trying to get in his face and say, "Oh, you want to take this outside?" And
Was he a half Rogan tall?
no, well, this Chris Morgan guy, he was probably a Rogan.
Well, it's funny because because Owen Benjamin always talks about how like there's a lot of short people who are kind of act like this,
Yeah.
where that they're always kind of like a little ornery and
Mm-hmm.
sneaky and kind of fussy.
Mm-hmm.
At least when it comes, I don't know about women, but definitely with guys.
No. This is a completely guy issue, right? Because no woman ever like freaks out about like being too short, or or has like that insecurity of being too short.
I
I
think
mean,
maybe
other than like very extreme cases and like maybe like some women who have dwarfism.
true. I would think it's like maybe it's the opposite thing, like where women who are very tall and like men who are really short, like there's kind of like this insecurity like issue.
Yeah.
Because I
Wow.
don't think there's a lot of guys that would date a woman that's taller than them. And after that you get to like a woman who's maybe like close to 6 foot, that's kind of
I don't know. I always say that I enjoy the challenge of taking down a giraffe.
you would be. I think you're very different, Andy. I don't know if I could. I would want a giraffe. I feel like it's like I shouldn't have to climb up on a step stool to
Well,
kiss
I'm not
my
talking. Yeah, but
girlfriend.
I'm not
Like,
talking. I'm not talking like those preposterous like women that play that are in the WNBA. But like yeah, I'd spit game at like a 6'2" chick.
I would love to see that. By the way,
Oh yeah, it's a sight to behold. Let me just tell you that it's a sight to behold. But yeah,
is
I
this
mean
guy like
he like,
is this
but
guy is he like an incel or something? Do you
what?
think? Is he an incel?
Uh, hmm, I wouldn't categorize him as such. But he's definitely a guy with a chip on his shoulder because of his height.
Definitely, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just like but then like the immediate like the immediacy that he went to like blame women, or to like say like, oh well, women on dating sites they tell me that you're 5 foot, you should be dead.
Well,
I mean, I know we kind of smirk now, but
that sounds so ridiculous. I mean,
yeah, but like, okay, let's grant him that that someone actually did say to him. It's like, what did you say to that woman though? Just because to spit out that particular, to spray that particular venom, you must have sprayed your own venom. And knowing and see
right.
and kind of seeing clips of this guy in action, like he's in the videos, in the two videos that I saw, he's either being like kind of like a jerk, like kind of pulling like doing like these stupid pranks on like friends, and then there's one other one where he was like trying to sell his car or something, and then he just like went off on this woman because like they she had said that she was gonna bring cash, but she didn't have the cash on her, and she's like, "What the hell are you doing? Get out of my car!" And it's just kind of like,
He got up on his step stool and he
yeah, let her have it, Um, but it kind of goes into that you know this ridiculous idea of heightism. But I mean, there Peter Dinklage, if the actor, who does have dwarfism. Have you seen his wife? She's a fucking smoke show.
Yeah, and someone
and
like
and also
I'm sorry.
and then another guy I know, Nick Vujovic, he has no
Mm,
arms and no legs. He has a really beautiful wife, and he has 2 kids.
right.
Yeah, and
It's
he gets around on a little motorized scooter. So what? So like for this Chris Morgan guy, what the hell is your problem?
yeah, and Peter
Or
Dinklage doesn't look
what's
like
your excuse?
he doesn't look like he lacks for any sort of self-esteem, or he seems like a very confident guy, like Peter Dinklage.
Yeah,
Um, and say with the guy with no arms and legs, I mean that's just you have your whole life is you have to be determined to keep going.
right. Yeah, I mean he's like, yeah, he's a motivational speaker, and and he's a Christian. He does like these huge events where he just preaches the word and he brings people to Christ. Um, yeah, and it's kind of like the old joke that pastors' wives are always the hottest.
Yeah.
It's just yeah, because because these women see something in these men, that goes beyond the physical.
Right. And I would say even like maybe you wouldn't say this about yourself, but I as your friend, and we've talked about this on the podcast where you don't see yourself as uh like a helpless case and like, oh, woe is me. Like you've kind of taken it like with your faith and saying it's like, no, this is how God created me to be, and who am I to like say that like uh, that I should be like upset about this. It's like it's just who I am, and it's just something I had to overcome. And you're a guy that doesn't really lack a lot of confidence in a lot of ways. You're
Yeah, and I mean, I'm
at
not
least
gonna say that
from
I'm not gonna say that I always had it. I definitely had to work at it. There are a lot of
right,
times where women just flat out said it to my face that like because of your hands, I cannot date you.
right, and that's gotta suck.
Yeah, and yeah, tremendously, tremendously, it sucks. But it doesn't make me like hate all women. Kind of, I mean, I don't know if this guy hates all women, but just the almost ease of which he like blew up at this bagel shop employee who happened to be a woman, and also that other video where he blows up at this woman that he just met while trying to sell his car or something. It kind of lends me to believe that he hates women for the kind of the slights that he imagines that they have done to him.
You gotta go to the school of Boomhauer, man. Like you're gonna get like 400 no's, but you know what? There's gonna
But
be
you
a
only
few
need
that are
one
gonna say
yes.
yes.
Yeah, I mean by that, yeah, it's kind of it's all about numbers. It's all about statistics. You might get 400 no's, but you just need that one yes, right? Yeah, and I mean, and I'm not gonna front, because I still sometimes struggle with that a bit, being rejected by women, and it's something that I'm constantly working on. And some days are better than most, but I don't hate women for it. I don't blame like my all of my troubles or whatever on women. Just like, okay, this particular chick was not ready for all this Asian delight.
Yeah.
So like whatever, you know you know
It's
bless
kind of the same.
bless
It's
you,
kind of
and hope you have a beautiful life.
yeah.
That's all you
It's
can
kind of
that's all you can do.
yeah. It's kind of the same with me because I mean, for it took a while like before I kind of really got into the dating game, and that was a huge struggle. And lately, it's been more winning than anything else, which is great. I found someone that's really
Well,
awesome.
yeah, because you just went back out there. You stuck your shovel. You didn't even dig. You just stick your shovel in the dirt, like boop, there it was.
Yeah, and that's because now that the dirt that is surrounding me has been cultivated and manicured and all this stuff. But like, yeah, it was real tough going for a long time.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's I was actually talking with Matt Wade just like last week, and I was telling him about like kind of like the struggles that I've had about and still kind of having like those residual feelings of being wanted or being found attractive, because that'll never happen for me. You know, you know, you know, because because I'm a realist, and so I understand that this is there are a lot of women who won't see past this. Who
True.
won't see past this, and so you know and and I've always said like these are God kind of like the silver lining, in all of it is like, God, God kind of blessed me, with the ultimate bullshit test. And so, if a woman can get past this, then they're, then they have, they have a chance at gold.
True.
So yeah, and Matt even said as much. He was like saying, yeah, God, he's gonna send you a woman who's gonna be able to see past that, and it might, and who cares if it's not, who cares if you're not desirable to all women? You just need to be desirable to one woman.
Exactly.
And so, yeah. So and he, and Matt, also knows my circumstances, and he's like, yeah, this is your time to, build up and be the man who's ready, for that woman. And so,
Absolutely.
so I'm, making preparations, as it were, and it's interesting too, because my pastor, he was recently going over, or he's going through Genesis, and we were recently on Noah, the story of Noah, and he didn't necessarily make this make this analogy, but I kind of put two and two together for myself, and I was like, make preparations like Noah, because God told him that there was going to be a flood coming, and he obeyed. He got the wood, he got all the materials, he started rebuilding. And even though people were telling him that he was crazy, and like, they're out, they lived in the desert, a very, or at least a very arid place. And so, like, his friends, his neighbors, they're all laughing at him. It's like, he's like, you're crazy. And then it wasn't like a short few months. It was years that Noah was spending to build this ship and making preparations. But when the time came, God, definitely looked after Noah, you know, and rewarded him for his faith.
Yeah. Now who's laughing?
Yeah. It's like, yeah, Gary, that's for not bringing back my plow.
Well, we definitely went on a very Bible bent today, which is great. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, people think that the Bible is just a book. Uh, here's what I've noticed: that people have a very inconsistent view of the Bible.
True.
Some people think it's fiction. Some people think it's a history book. Some people think it's just allegory or fables. Uh, but they never see it as true.
True, and actually, because since the Bible study that you and I and like some of our podcast mates are going to be doing soon, that's part of like what I'm going to talk about is that it's not just historical narrative, it's not just poetry, it's all these different styles of writing that are used and how we navigate that, and how there's truth. It's all truth.
Mm-hmm.
It's just discussed in different ways, and how we navigate those
Right.
those waters of how those men, through God, wrote these books, and what do we do with it?
Right. But I think what people also miss is if one thing is not true in the Bible, then none of it's true.
Yeah, that's the why you get a lot of the detractors who are trying to chip away at certain, especially some of the, I would say, like the critical points of the Bible. And if you knock down one of those pillars, which you technically can't, then none of it's true.
Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I don't know if you journal. I journal. Do you journal?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I have a journal, and it's kind of like a general journal, and I just kind of like write about my day or the things that I'm going through at the time. in some seasons or some years, it's really great. Everything's going great for me, and all this, um, everything's coming up Andrew, as it were. And there's your second Simpsons reference of the episode.
Don't.
Yeah, and then there are certain seasons, there are certain years where things are just crummy for me, and I'm writing down like all the things that are bad happening to me or things that didn't go my way and things. But if you take the totality of what I've written, it's either all true or it's not. If like one year is embellished or not accurate or false, then you can't take anything else that I've written as true or as true. So it's the same way. It's the same thing for the Bible. If even one thing in the Bible is false, then it's the Bible's worthless. It's all false.
Right.
Right.
Heavy.
Yeah, I know. Right. This isn't just your ordinary late night podcast where we just like shoot the shit and talk things that are going on in the world or the news or whatever. We like to impart some wisdom. Not wisdom of our own. It's is the wisdom that God has revealed to us through His Word.
Well, should we dive into the movie review, or is there anything else you want to do before that?
No, I mean there was some other stuff, but at this, it's so early that it would just be more of a reaction and not so much of a like kind of like
an analysis.
An analysis. But it's just
all right.
Anyway, it was more the same. But anyways, yes. This week's movie is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
So before we start, because we were doing movies from 1939. Mm-hmm. The reason I wanted, and I kind of wanted to explain like why I wanted to do this particular year, mm-hmm. is because this was such a heavyweight year for film. You had, I think it was like 7 movies that were up for Best Picture, mm-hmm. That year, and all the movies that we're going to be talking about were multiple nominations. I think all the ones that we talked about won awards in some way or another, mm-hmm. Or at the very least were nominated for sure. But like it was a not only was it a change in cinematography, music, but all these movies, like the stories were just fantastic. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if maybe Andy, you could pull it up. Is like what awards was this nominated for, and what did it win?
Okay, let's see.
Because when I was watching, it's like I fucking love this movie. This is a great movie.
Yeah, it was awarded quite a bit, or it was nominated for quite a bit.
I think it had like 11 nominations.
Yeah, let me just read them off to you. Outstanding Production, nominated. Best Director, nominated. Best Actor, nominated. Best Writing Screenplay, nominated. Best Writing Original Story, 1. Best Supporting Actor, nominated. Best Art Direction, nominated. Best Film Editing, nominated. Best Music Scoring, nominated. Best Sound Recording, nominated.
Wow. So
yeah, that's a lot of awards just to be nominated for.
Right. And well, what it was going up against too is like pretty amazing as well.
Right. Yeah. Because I don't want to give away too much. Because one, I don't even know because you're in charge of this month.
Yeah.
But at least one of the movies that we're gonna watch for sure. Yeah, I understand why.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But so for the story of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, it is a It's kind. I guess it would be a political drama. I guess it'd be the best way to categorize this movie.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So it's starring Jimmy Stewart, and it starts off where there's a senator who we're not really given the reason as to why, but he passes away, and
He just might have been
so
old.
they maybe, but they're scrambling to find a replacement. And we're never really given political parties as to who's in which.
Right.
But so they're scrambling to find a seat to replace this dead senator, and they're trying to manipulate the citizens. Like, oh, we need to have like this type of person or this person. We want them to kind of follow the party line, which sounds very familiar to today's politics because it's pretty much exactly what happens today. And this governor who's kind of along the same party, his kids are a huge fan of this guy who's a leader of this this young boys group called the Boy Rangers. So I'm assuming it's like kind of a version of the Boy Scouts is kind of like what they were going for.
Right.
Kind of an outdoorsman, loves America, yada yada yada, so on and so forth. And they end up going with this guy who his name is Mr. Smith. What's his first name? I forget his first name in the movie. Jefferson Smith. And he is kind of this like gee golly shucks kind of character where he just
he's very naive, very idealistic.
Yeah, and very quickly he gets a dose of reality of what he's up against, and they blast him in the media. They're asking him all these questions, and he's giving honest answers and just being himself.
Right, but they're manipulating everything. Like some of the pictures that they use, they superimpose like these headlines. One where he was doing like some sort of bird call, but he's like he's plugging his nose, and then the headline is like Jefferson's first sniff of Washington is like, and it's like it stinks or.
Right, and
just like these very underhanded, very deceitful sort of tactics.
And he goes about and I actually thought this was just like him and what he was thinking, but he actually goes on a rampage and he punches all of these all these reporters in the face. It was great.
Or it seems like even people just carrying the newspapers.
Yeah. He started punching these reporters in the face, and he ends up chasing them into this bar full of reporters. So there was that one scene. I thought that was hilarious because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of politicians that would love to punch some reporters in the face.
Right, but I think it was great in terms of as a character, because here's this young man from small town America, where a man is only as good as his word, and he literally comes to the den of vipers, to Washington, and he gets a taste of the venom, and it's like how dare you print these lies about me, so because he's more accustomed to small town living where everyone's held accountable for their actions or their words. He goes and deals squarely with these reporters, and which is to thoroughly punch them in the face.
Yeah, and so unlike Jefferson Smith, everyone's kind of in on they know the corruption it's all kind of everyone's kind
it's
of
very mundane. The corruption is very mundane. It's par for the course. It's of course there's corruption. Of course people are going to make these these backroom deals and and kind of and greasing the wheels, so to speak. So it's all that kind of thing is very mundane for Washington.
It's they know it's the game you have to play. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and everyone kind of knows it. And so Jeff Smith, he's like, no, I don't want to do that, and but he is encouraged to by his the other senator that's of his state.
Yeah.
To
it's like, the mentor figure.
The mentor figure who is like friends with his dad, who was essentially killed under mysterious circumstances, which is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That was never addressed in the film, but
right, yeah,
seemed rather
seems suspicious.
Exactly. And it was right after that where his dad's friend ended up becoming a senator, or he ended up kind of changing how he did things and ended up becoming a senator. So very interesting indeed. So he is telling, like, the one thing that Jefferson Smith like wants to do is like, well, one thing I'm really passionate about is like I would love to create this boys camp, utilizing where they we secure a certain land that but like
from the government, and we get a loan, and then the kids, to learn like some sort of like civic duty, or just like general like finance, like okay, like we'll take a loan out from the government, but then we'll have the kids pay back that loan.
Yeah, through like just random donations that they do to get into the camp. And it turns out that land is part of a shady deal that's going on to secure this area around the dam. So it's kind of like a land grab for people to make money, utilizing the power that they have in government, which is very, at best, corrupt, at worst illegal, to do that. And because of that, they are trying to, like, once that bill is kind of put into motion by Jefferson Smith, that's where all kind of hell breaks loose, and that's where the real drama comes in, is because because Smith won't play ball with kind of the party line. They blast him and they go against him, and that's where like the drama of the story comes into play.
Yeah, and that's really where, again, like Robert said, that's when like the real story begins, and it's Jefferson Smith fighting for his reputation, and it ultimately culminates in his filibustering of the Senate. And for those of you who didn't pay attention in their government class in school, or they just weren't taught this, filibustering is what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? A tactic to be used to hold off on a vote in the Senate or in Congress.
Right.
And the rules are you have to be standing, and you have to be continuously speaking. And as soon as you sit down, you're basically yielding back the floor. So once you are up, you have to
keep standing.
You have to keep standing, keep talking, but you can yield. You can either yield the floor, or you can yield for questions. But if you stop speaking, or if you sit down, then you've given up your right, and the vote can then go forward. There actually been a few instances in U.S. history where filibustering has happened, and the only one that sticks out to me was one that I actually learned from my government class in high school. Was a senator or a congressman, I forget which, but they had like the Betty Crocker cookbook, and they read the entire cookbook cover to cover. So they're giving recipes for for brownies and and omelets and all sorts out of this Betty Crocker cookbook.
Oh, I had to look that, because I feel like I remember hearing about that, but I don't remember the circumstances behind it. I might have to go back and look.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's just funny because I thought that was so hilarious that you literally can just have to keep speaking, and it doesn't matter what you say. Like there was another fictitious example, but the King of the Hill episode where
Right,
Hank,
the toilet
yeah,
episode.
yeah, the toilet episode where
I was
the
gonna bring that
government
up, by the way.
forced the residents to switch to low flow toilets, but they were crappy, and like you have to like flush the toilet like 8 times, which defeats the purpose of low flow toilets. But it's also like this shady kind of corrupt government thing where one of the council members kind of benefited.
The toilet company.
Yeah, worked for like the toilet company and benefited. And so what Hank does, he starts filibustering, and
So everyone has to take a shit.
yeah, like the thing is like you like everyone else could like take like small breaks here and there, but Hank had to keep talking, and yeah, the gag was like they would eventually have to go to the bathroom and use these crappy low flow toilets and see like that they were no good, and that they would then vote to have them removed and have like the high flow toilets be reinstated or not illegal.
So yeah, I actually was gonna mention, because it was like after watching this movie, it's like, oh, I see that whole episode of King of the Hill was a parody off of Mr. Smith.
Exactly.
Washington.
Yeah.
And obviously, you had the Simpsons episode where they were kind of making fun of like doing the Mel Gibson remake of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Right. Yes, but back to Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. About during his filibuster, you know, Senator Payne, the other senator from his state and his mentor, he towards the end he's filled with so much remorse and guilt over what he's had to put this young man through, that he goes and he actually tries to kill himself. Because he's so rattled, he's so riddled with guilt over what he's what the slander and the libel that he's done to this young man, his former partner's son. He just tried to kill himself, and then he ultimately confesses and says like, oh, because like they're trying to vote Jefferson Smith out of the Senate, and that's what the filibustering is for, to hold off on that vote. But the guilt and that he was that Senator Payne was feeling was so great that he just finally broke down. It's like no, Jeff is a good guy. I'm the weasel. I should be the one voted out, not him. And like kind of like this very dramatic scene. And
I think that partly comes about because Smith confronts Senator Payne and says like, because it's I think it was at the point of like hour like 20 or something like that of this filibuster, and it's like talking, he's referencing to Senator Payne. It's like there was one time where I was told it's like that Senator Payne like used to fight for these lost causes, and it's like sometimes those were the only fights worth like going
right.
For.
It was a callback to the conversation. Yeah, it was a callback to the conversation that they're having on the train on the way to Washington, and they were talking about the good old days and how he used to be friends with his dad, and they used to be partners, and how like they would that they both fought for the lost causes, and so he was kind of reminding him of where he started out as, and so I think that coupled with like the anguish that he was putting Jefferson in was just too much for Senator Payne, and he runs back after trying to kill himself with I think one of the guards pistols. He comes running back onto the Senate floor and is just like, no, I'm the one that doesn't deserve to be here.
Yeah,
and this kind of like redemptive moment.
Right. I also want to talk. Let's talk about the female. I guess it would be the female lead is Saunders and her character, like how she's obviously been kind of through the gauntlet of all these politicians, and she knows the game.
Yeah, she's been in the political machine at least since like maybe 16. Or like at least by her words.
Right, and it's like she's kind of like, she's kind of seen it all, seen and done it all. And in a
Yeah,
lot of ways,
to the point where like she herself was kind of like jaded by the whole thing, and like she even like rolled her eyes at Jefferson Smith. When he came to town, he was like so full of like wonderment and like seeing all the monuments and Americana and things like that, that she was just like, she's like, okay, kid, just like try to just try to keep it in your pants.
right, and in a lot of ways, yeah, she's a quote unquote secretary, but she's obviously a lot more than that,
Right.
because
Yeah.
she definitely is an influencer. I loathe to use that term, but yeah, she's
But
someone that like,
I think in this context, it's fitting, because like she
right,
had like that one reporter guy that was like her like sidekick, but like was like totally in love with her, and she was the one that like knew how to get things done, and like was the one that schooled Jefferson about the process of how of writing a bill, and the process it takes for it to like go from you know the proposal to like committees, and then back to the house, and then back, and
right.
then like she was like
So
actually trying to dissuade him from this, but he was hearing this, and it's like
all right, let's do
yeah,
it.
all right, yeah, let's do it.
Okay, could I have time to get a pencil? So, oh yeah, you get a pencil.
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
so
I
yeah,
I actually liked her character a lot, because
yeah, me
if
too. I liked her
anybody,
a lot too.
she, I think of any character in the movie, she grows the most, because she goes from this jaded, like, she was ready to get out of politics. Like, she was like working I need to get the hell out of this town. I need to get married. I just need to get away.
Mm.
And she was like, and Smith was the guy that I think changed her mindset, and saying like, wow,
Right, he was the one that
there's someone.
broke. He was the one that
He's not
broke her
just
cynicism.
right, because it's like, it wasn't just about, like, he wasn't just saying these things. He actually believed them and was willing to fight for it. And I think, like, in she talked about, like, I feel like this weird gravitation towards him, and she thought maybe it was like these motherly, like, kind of like, I feel like I'm kind of taking care of this kid.
Yeah.
But then it developed into real feelings, which
Right, because like yeah, especially
was
when he
kind
was
of
like
a
this.
very, like, a weird side note, because they never really developed it. Like, I mean, obviously there was a connection between them, but she, I think what they never, there was no after story, essentially. Like, it
Right.
kind of didn't, like, uh we're left hanging on a lot of storylines in this
Right.
movie, by the way.
Uh-huh. But what was I gonna say? Yeah, he was. Jefferson Smith was just a genuine person, and but he said what he meant, and he meant what he said, and he believed everything. He believed in the greatness of America, and like the process and all of that. All of that stuff. Um, and it was his energy, his naivete that kind of revitalized that revitalized her, and and like the way that he talked wasn't like anyone that she'd ever known, because being she even said like she grew up in the city, like in Baltimore, and then she worked in Washington for so long, and like the politicians, like they say one thing but they mean another, or they mean one thing but they say another.
Right.
But here comes Jefferson Smith, and he speaks. He means what he says, and he says what he means. And like and even like the way he describes things is so genuine and authentic, that it just smashes her cynicism, and it's like, and it reinvigorates her to help him prepare for the filibuster.
Yeah. And so I love the relationship between those two. And um, let's talk a little. So something I noted, and I think we talked a little bit about before we started filming, recording this, is the how. Yes, this movie is 80 years old, but how ridiculously similar to what we're dealing with in today's media and
Right. Yeah.
politics.
Yeah. Like
This movie
it's
felt
80
very
years old,
relevant.
but it couldn't be more relevant to today.
And one thing was like obviously in how the media manipulation,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously like when they're trying to uh, you know kind of bury Jefferson Smith with the media and like, oh no, so nothing that he's saying, what he's actually saying is getting out. It's only like kind of bits and pieces and very edited content to make him look bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yet you have this like kind of small, young, like kind of small, like the Boy Rangers newspaper is the only one that's actually telling the truth of the story, and then they're being like beaten up and railroaded
Right. And yeah,
by.
it's you can see the progression because at first, it's just like they're going, they kind of spot the kids and they just grab the bundles from the kids, and then next it's I think there was like some sort of like town meeting or something, and like there's like these what you would call them maybe pundits, but they're like kind of railing against Jefferson Smith, and there's like this one lone kid in the crowd. It's like, yo, no, like Jeff's telling the truth, and like immediately like two guys come and like kind of muzzle him and like carry him out, and then like slowly more and more escalation. And it's like there's like this truck and like there's like this kid with pulling the wagon full of like the bundles of the newsletters, and then like the truck just runs over the wagon. Um, and
Oh,
then
but
it,
no,
and
the
then
worst
yeah, and then
part.
it finally escalates into a straight up murder when there's like this group of like older kids, like teens, and they're like driving in a car with these signs that saying like believe in Jeff, or Jeff's not Jeff's telling the truth. And then all of a sudden, like one of Taylor, who's I think was based off of William Randolph Hearst, if I'm not mistaken.
That might be the yeah. I had to look that up, but yeah, that might be true.
Yeah, but some of his men are driving like this big truck, and they just purposely run into this car full of kids.
And they
Like,
run him into like a brick wall,
yeah,
and it's like they killed those
yeah,
kids.
they killed those kids, and I mean,
Because
and I
I
think
was
this, yeah, and it's
I
a
was
like,
watching this with my girlfriend at the time. We both were like, "What the hell just happened? They killed those kids."
yeah, it's absolutely, it's actually absolutely mind-boggling, but it's also it's also analogous to what's happening now with like tech censorship and like the media, the legacy media, trying to have a stranglehold on the news and what information gets out there, and so like watching that scene, it was very analogous because first like they just try to take the bundles away, which is kind of like what is it? Like kind of like YouTube and how like they came up with like the system of flagging. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
someone says something objectionable, let us know. We'll take care of it. It's like initially it's like these small things, like just take away the bundles away from the kids, or and then it's like demonetizations or copyright claims. When
right.
when you have like them like running over like wagons full of like the bundles, or you like, and then you have like putting videos into like limited state when it's like like literally like those two men who are censoring that small boy, and then you have like the total like erasure of people, a la Alex Jones or Gavin McInnes or Laura Loomer or what have you,
Yeah, they're
with the
depersonalizing
murder
them.
of those children.
Yeah. Um, it was just it was crazy. It's like this movie is 80 years old, but how similar and relevant it is to today that was all I could think about when I was watching this film. And it's like, no, hey, I love the movie. I love the characters. I love the drama. Um, and it just man it. But it's so relevant to today.
Absolutely,
And it's like
100%.
A couple things that I felt were, if I had to nitpick the film a little bit, I felt like it built up to this climax, and then it just ended. Like, because there was no like, I I mean, maybe it probably would have been a little out of place, I guess, like because obviously there was the semi love story between Jefferson Smith and Saunders,
Mhm.
that kind of developed throughout the film. And then there was no like resolution as to what happened to guys like Senator Payne and like the political machine behind him.
All right, James Taylor.
Yeah, the James Taylor machine.
Mhm.
Um, so there was really like it was just kind of the filibuster ended, and so the movie ended. And so I was saying, it's like the movie ended a little abruptly.
Right. Yeah, because it was like, yes, so Jefferson probably wasn't going to be voted out of the Senate, but you didn't see the aftermath. Kind of like in later political driven dramas. You kind of have like the whirling newspaper where it says like, oh, Senator Payne, voted out of the Senate. James Taylor under, and then another one coming up is like James Taylor. Investigated for corruption and and grifting, as they would call it.
Right. So there's really like
So
no,
yeah, so we're just kind of like left hanging and left to our own imaginations to kind of uh,
which is
maybe put like
fine.
a conclusion, not an
Yeah.
ending, but a conclusion to like some of
Right.
like the dangling storylines.
Right. Which is fine. I don't mind like having um kind of like left to my imagination type of endings, but for everything that happened, I've never seen a movie end at the climax. Usually there's a little bit of like kind of cool down at the end, and then the
Right?
movie
Yeah.
ends. I've never
Yeah, because
seen a
it's so
movie end
intense.
like
Yeah, because it's so
this.
intense. You kind of need that like kind of parachute back down to the ground. But
Yeah,
yeah, but we didn't
we
get
are
that. We
not.
just like we just jumped out. We jumped out, and then it's like and then it just cuts out.
Yeah, I've never seen a movie in my life ever end quite like that. So that I mean, I don't know if I would say that that's a negative or a positive. Um, just I've never seen it before.
Hmm.
Was there anything that like maybe you didn't care for about the film, or is there something like you felt like you wish you would have had a little bit more of a resolution towards?
Uh, hmm. I don't think so. I think this might be a time where like again we're kind of like lined up. Yeah, where my only gripe, not my only, but my major gripe is the abruptness of the ending.
The
Um,
the other thing that we didn't touch on too, the car with the older boy rangers, those
mhm.
are Senator Payne's kids, by the way.
Are they? I didn't even notice.
Yeah, yeah, one like at least two of them were Senator Payne's
Oh no no
kids.
no! Wait. No, those are the governor's kids.
Oh, the
Yeah, because
governor's
Senator
kids.
Payne had a daughter, but then
That's
he
right.
didn't
Yeah,
mention.
no,
Yeah.
that's what I meant. It was the governor's kids that were in that car.
Oh my god. Yeah. Yeah, because if it, like I mean they like the governor's kids weren't old enough to drive, but they were at least in the car.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, I didn't even notice that. So
that's
yeah, there should have been. Yeah, there's like there should be been an event. Like there should have been like at the end there should have been like another spinning wheels talking about how was it Taylor being investigated for the death of the governor's children?
yeah. It's like that. That was that was the wildest moment. Like to me in that film, it's like what they killed those kids, and they were the governor's kids who like fought to like who like you know at that scene at dinner, like where they're like talking.
Yeah, they're talking up Jefferson Smith, and it's like, oh yeah, you'd be a
Yeah,
fool not to appoint Jefferson Smith. And for those of you younger people who look confused, it's like, why would a governor appoint a senator? That's how it used to work back in the day. Before I forget which amendment.
yeah.
It's one of the later amendments. But before, senators were appointed by the state because they were supposed to represent the interests of the state.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
they
They were
weren't
not
supposed
voted
to.
like they are.
Yeah, they weren't supposed to represent the people of the state. They were supposed to represent the interests of the state itself, because that's what the Congress is for. The Congress is a direct representation of the people within the state.
I'm trying to remember, like, when did that? I forgot when that amendment went into effect, where we actually voted for senators. I don't think it was much longer after that. By the way.
Yeah, it was like probably either the tail end or kind of like the middle of maybe like even during World War II.
I think because there was definitely some changes after FDR's death. I think that may have been one of them where they
Right.
decided to. Yeah, so that would be the one thing that's a little bit different politically than it is today.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's this is a great movie. I see why it's one of the all-time greats.
Mm-hmm.
What did we say? It was number 6 on the list.
I believe. No, 6 was something else. Hold on.
What is this on the AFI list? Top 100.
Right. Hold on. Oops. AFI top 100. Oh, it's 26.
26. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but still
26.
pretty high up there.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any thoughts before we give our rating, Andy, that you'd like to mention in the film? Mention about the film?
No. Yeah. Again, this is one of those movies that I only know kind of like the cultural relevance. But actually,
Was this your first time watching it?
yeah.
Yeah, same here. I've never seen. I actually have never. I've seen all the tropes and everything, but like
Yeah, the
I've
tropes and
never seen it.
parodies, and I kind of understand this cultural significance of the movie, but I never watched the movie outright. Uh,
So
so,
yeah, this is a great treat actually for me.
mhm. Yeah, it was great. It was great. I really enjoyed it, and especially like just how applicable, just how how relevant it is. Even after all this time, it's still
Yeah,
relevant. It's quite amazing and spectacular to think about. Although it kind of makes sense because you know socialism and all the ills of the world happened at the beginning of the last century. So I guess this if time is or history is cyclical, then it only makes sense because it's the beginning of this new century. So
yeah.
it's only logical that socialism and communism rear their ugly heads again at the beginning of this new century.
Yeah, definitely. It was. I was blown away by how relevant the movie is even today.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be your rating on this movie, Andy?
My rating for this is 4.5. 4.5 stars.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with that too because I do. As much as I like Gone with the Wind, I
Mm-hmm.
think this movie was a little bit better. So I don't think I can't rate them the same way.
Right.
Um,
And they're different experiences as well.
completely different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I think just and I don't think it's just because of the time. Because obviously this is a this is a much shorter movie than Gone with the Wind.
True. What is it?
I mean, so that was definitely
It's
a
like
little
a
bit of a
third. It's like
breather.
a third of the length of Gone with the Wind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Amazing to think about, but yeah, this movie was 1/3 the length of Gone with the Wind.
I
Jeez.
would have given it 5 if not for I felt a little bit unsettled with how quickly the movie ended. So that's why I'm not giving it a 5.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, everything else, like all the awards that it was nominated for, and whatever it did win, it definitely deserved it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now I'll be honest, I've not seen many Jimmy Stewart movies.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is actually one of his earlier films, isn't it?
Yeah, he was so young.
I want to say this is like maybe like one of his first like dozen films that he did.
Right. Because like yeah, one of the again another early one was It's a Wonderful Life.
That's I mean I think that's the one that most people know Jimmy Stewart for. I mean
But
he's
then
been
he
in
was
like
like I think he was a bit older, but so like but this is like he seemed like really young. I mean I don't know exactly how old he was when he made this movie, but I don't know. It's like I don't know. 'Cause I have like I don't know. I have this in my mind's eye. I see Jimmy Stewart, in certain ways, and like even in It's a Wonderful Life, I didn't see him as being that young. I don't. I mean, maybe because he was playing a father or whatever,
right.
yeah. But in this movie, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, it's he just seems so like really young, and maybe that's because like of the character's naivete, or idyllic outlook on everything just kind of made him seem younger. But he could have been just like a couple to a few years younger than when he made It's a Wonderful Life.
True. I might have to look at his filmography to see what he's been in, but yeah, I see why like he's such a popular actor.
Mm-hmm.
I think he did a great job in the lead role. I like the lady who played Miss Saunders. I thought she was really fantastic.
Yeah, Gene
Uh,
Arthur.
yeah, Jean Arthur. Thank you. She was really great in this film.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, because
all the act.
you understood her point of view, where when she was jaded, and then you felt like the turmoil she was feeling, because she was basically sending Jefferson on a fool's errand by writing this bill, because she knew like oh, this isn't going to get passed because the higher ups have plans for that area that you want to build that camp.
Yeah. Um, so it's just to see her growth throughout the film was great. It was I was just blown away. I love this movie a lot. I will definitely be watching this again.
Indeed. All right. Well, I think that's all we have to say about this movie. It is a great one, and again, we've said it multiple times on this podcast. But even though it's 80 years old, it is still highly relevant to today's time. Uh, and both me and Robert give it a 4.5 out of 5.
I
Definitely
hate that we
go.
agree, but yeah.
What was it?
I hate that we agree, but yeah,
I know it's yeah, it just fit. Yeah, the 4.5 just fits so perfectly. So yeah, definitely go check it out. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you think about it. And that'll do it for us tonight. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us every Tuesday, sometimes live. I believe we'll be back live next week,
Yes.
unless Robert's schedule changes. Don't forget to check out the library of other shows. Don't forget, we have the Circle of Jerks main podcast. We have, of course, this show, Nocturnal Transmissions, and Robert's gaming channel, Up by Up Down. Don't forget to follow us on our various social media accounts, Twitter at PodcastTOJ and Instagram at Circle of Jerks Podcast. That all being said, for Robert and myself, we'll say goodnight, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
And I'll say, don't do anything I wouldn't.